The secret of eternal youth lies not in the emptiness of the vessel, but in the wisdom of the flame, to burn the debris of the past without scorching the foundation of the future. The Alchemist of Time. We often perceive ourselves as statues made of flesh, solid and enduring, marching linearly through time from the vibrancy of youth toward the inevitable erosion of age. When we look in the mirror, we see a singular entity, a noun, a self that remains constant even as the years etch their lines upon our faces. Yet, this perception is a grand illusion, a trick of the light played by memory and continuity. In truth, you are not a noun, but a verb. You are a perpetual event, a ceaseless river of biological activity where destruction and creation dance in a tight, desperate embrace. Every second, millions of your cells are dying, and millions more are struggling to be born. The question that defines the length and quality of your life is not how well you preserve the statue, but how efficiently you manage the rubble. For decades, we believed that this management was a passive decline, a slow accumulation of dust in the corners of our biological house until the rooms became uninhabitable. We called this aging. We accepted it as the fading of the light. But in 2016, a Japanese cell biologist named Yoshinori Ohsumi shattered this assumption and was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for illuminating a mechanism that had been humming quietly inside us since the dawn of life. He mapped the machinery of autophagy. The word itself is derived from the Greek auto, meaning self, and phagein, meaning to eat, self-eating. To the uninitiated, this sounds like a macabre act of cannibalism, a self-destructive impulse. However, in the alchemy of biology, it is exactly the opposite. Autophagy is the body's innate recycling program, a miraculous furnace where the broken, the toxic, and the senescent parts of the cell are dismantled and forged into new fuel and fresh building blocks. It is the mythical phoenix rising from its own ashes, playing out on a microscopic scale within the trillions of galaxies that comprise your body. When this process is active, time flows backward biologically, the rusted machinery is replaced, the sludge is cleared, and the cell hums with the pristine energy of youth. For years, however, a new dogma has risen around this discovery, a rigid gatekeeper standing between you and your own renewal. This is the myth of the 16-hour fast. A narrative has taken hold in the wellness community, preached with almost religious fervor, stating that this holy grail of autophagy can only be sipped after a long, arduous pilgrimage through the desert of hunger. The prevailing belief is that you must starve the body for 16, 18, or even 24 hours to turn the key in the lock. They tell you that unless your stomach is empty and your will is tested, the furnace remains cold. While there is truth to the power of fasting, to view it as the only path is to misunderstand the elegance of human biology. It is to view the body as a crude machine that only understands the binary language of feast or famine, rather than a responsive ecosystem that listens to subtle chemical whispers. The Nobel science did not merely hand us a stopwatch, it handed us a map of the molecular signaling pathways that govern this process. It revealed that autophagy is not solely a reaction to starvation, but a response to specific metabolic stress signals that can be mimicked, modulated, and mastered without the necessity of prolonged deprivation. We are standing on the precipice of a new understanding, one that bridges the gap between the ancient Daoist practices of energy conservation and the cutting-edge molecular biology of the 21st century. We are beginning to see that the body does not tell time by looking at a clock on the wall. It tells time by reading the nutrient sensors in the blood, the energy currency in the mitochondria, and the hormonal tides that wash over our organs. If we look closely at the work of Ohsumi and the research that followed, we find that the 16-hour wall is permeable. It is a construct of our limited understanding, not a biological absolute. There are mimetics behaviors, compounds, and specific physiological states that can trick the body into believing it is in a state of scarcity, thereby triggering the cleanup crew of autophagy while you are still nourished and energetic. This revelation is profound because it democratizes longevity. It takes the power of cellular renewal out of the hands of the ascetic few, who can endure days of hunger, and places it into the hands of the many. It suggests that we can maintain the delicate balance of anabolism growth and catabolism breakdown without swinging violently between extremes. As we embark on this exploration, we must cast aside the linear thinking that has dominated nutrition science for so long. We are not just calculating calories or counting hours. We are learning the language of the cells. We are learning how to whisper to the lysosomes, the recycling centers, and tell them to wake up. We are exploring the concept that aging is not an accumulation of years, but a failure of clearance. It is the time leak where the debris of the past clogs the machinery of the future. By understanding the true nature of autophagy, beyond the simplistic fasting protocols, we are essentially learning how to seal that leak. We are discovering how to keep the flame of the furnace burning bright enough to consume the waste, but controlled enough not to burn down the house. This journey will take us deep into the microscopic universe, where proteins fold and unfold like origami, and where the difference between a cancer cell and a healthy cell often lies in the efficiency of this very cleaning process. We will uncover how ancient ingredients, forgotten breath patterns, and specific movements act as the software codes to program this hardware. We are moving beyond the myth of the clock and into the reality of the chemistry. It is a journey from the heavy, tangible world of dietary restriction into the lighter, more fluid world of metabolic signaling. Here, in this space between the molecules, lies the secret to reversing the biological clock, not by fighting time, but by purifying the vessel through which time flows. To truly grasp the essence of autophagy without the rigid chains of fasting, we must descend into the fundamental duality that governs all biological life. Within the microscopic cathedral of every cell, there exists a perpetual tension between two opposing forces, two master regulatory pathways that act as the yin and yang of your existence. Science names them mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin, and AMPK, activated protein kinase, but for our purpose, let us call them the architect and the custodian. The architect, mTOR, is the force of growth, reproduction, and abundance. When you consume protein, when insulin surges through your veins, the architect awakes. It commands the cell to build, to divide, to expand. It is the energy of spring, the lush overgrowth of a forest in the height of summer. It is necessary for life, for without it, we would wither and vanish. But the architect is reckless. In its haste to build, it creates debris. It leaves behind misfolded proteins, damaged organelles, and metabolic exhaust. It constructs a city but ignores the trash piling up in the streets. Opposing this force is the custodian, AMPK. This is the ancient sensor of scarcity, the master switch of energy conservation. When the cell senses that fuel is low, or when it receives specific signals that mimic low fuel, the custodian steps forward. It silences the architect. It halts the construction of new structures and turns the cell's attention inward. It looks at the debris left by the architect, the broken mitochondria, the senescent zombie cells, the accumulated plaque, and marks them for destruction. It creates the autophagosomes, the double membrane vesicles that act as trash bags, collecting the waste and dragging it to the lysosome to be dissolved. This is autophagy. The tragedy of modern existence is that we live in a world designed to keep the architect permanently awake and the custodian permanently asleep. We are constantly fed, constantly stimulated, constantly growing, and thus, we are constantly accumulating the trash of our own aliveness. Here lies the heart of the 16-hour myth. The prevailing dogma suggests that the custodian only wakes up when the fuel tank is completely empty, requiring long stretches of absolute deprivation to silence the architect. But nature is rarely so binary. It does not operate on simple on-off switches, but rather on dimmer switches and gradients. The profound realization of the Nobel-winning science is that we do not need to empty the fuel tank to wake the custodian. We simply need to lower the volume of the growth signals. We must learn to decouple nutrient intake from the growth signaling that shuts down autophagy. This is the concept of caloric restriction mimetic substances and states that trick the body into a protective, regenerative mode even in the presence of food. Consider the paradox of the plant kingdom. Plants cannot run from stress, they cannot flee from the scorching sun or the biting insect. Instead, they produce chemical compounds, polyphenols, tannins, alkaloids to defend themselves. When we ingest these compounds, they act as mild stressors on our own biology, a phenomenon known as hormesis. They whisper a signal of danger or scarcity to our cells without causing actual harm. A cup of green tea rich in AGG, a dash of turmeric containing curcumin, or the spermidine found in aged cheese and mushrooms, these are not merely foods, they are molecular keys. They bind to the same receptors that fasting would activate. They suppress the architect mTOR and gently nudge the custodian AMPK awake. By utilizing these keys, one can create a fasting mimicking state where the cellular recycling machinery hums to life, scrubbing the cells clean, even while the stomach is not growling in distress. Therefore, the core theme of our exploration is not deprivation, but modulation. It is about shifting our understanding from a caloric model of nutrition to a signaling model of nutrition. A calorie of sugar and a calorie of olive oil may burn with the same heat in a laboratory furnace, but they speak entirely different languages to your DNA. Sugar screams at the architect to build and store fat, shutting down autophagy instantly. Healthy fats and specific fat nutrients, however, can bypass the architect entirely, providing energy to the body while leaving the cleaning crews undisturbed. This is the secret loophole in the 16-hour wall. We are discovering that we can navigate the narrow ridge between nourishment and cleansing, occupying a liminal space where the body is fed enough to function, but signaled enough to repair. We must also confront the illusion of linearity that plagues our perception of aging. We tend to think that damage accumulates linearly and that repair requires a linear amount of time, like 16 hours. But biology is non-linear. It is cyclical and rhythmic. Autophagy is not a destination you arrive at after a long journey. It is a rhythm you fall into. It is a pulse. Just as the heart beats and rests, the cell must build and clean. The 16-hour myth imposes an artificial, external clock on an internal, organic rhythm. By understanding the chemical triggers of autophagy, low insulin, AMPK activation, sirtuin stimulation, we can learn to sync our lifestyle with this internal rhythm, pulsing the cleaning signal multiple times a day through breath, temperature, and specific nutrients, rather than waiting for a daily starvation window to force the door open. We are moving from the brute force of fasting to the elegant precision of metabolic signaling, turning the heavy iron key of deprivation into a set of precise, golden tumblers that unlock the font of youth from within. To truly internalize the mechanics of this hidden renewal, we must step away from the microscope and walk into the realm of myth, for the language of the cell is often best understood through the language of the soul. Imagine your body not as a biological machine, but as a great, ancient house. This house was built by ancestors long forgotten, designed to last for a century or more. In the beginning, when the house is new, the hallways are wide and clear, sunlight streams through the windows, and the air moves freely from room to room. This is youth. But this house is inhabited by a voracious, energetic artist, the architect we spoke of, who is obsessed with creation. Every day, he brings in new furniture, paints new canvases, and constructs new additions. He never stops. He brings in banquet tables laden with food, heavy drapes to cover the windows, and intricate statues that clutter the floors. For decades, the artist works without pause, for he is fed constantly. The delivery trucks arrive morning, noon, and night, bringing more materials, more food, more stuff. The house begins to fill, the hallways narrow. The sunlight is blocked by piles of unused canvas and rotting wood. Dust settles thick on the chandeliers, and the air becomes stagnant. The very structure of the house groans under the weight of this accumulation. This is the state of the modern body, overstimulated, and choked by the excess of its own growth. The artist thinks he is creating life, But in his refusal to stop, he is creating a tomb. The 16-hour myth is like a strict landlord who finally locks the doors and bans the delivery trucks for a huge portion of the day, forcing the artist to stop and look at the mess he has made. It works, certainly. In the silence of the lockdown, the artist has no choice but to burn the old furniture for warmth and clear the hallways to move around. But there is another way, a secret known to the wise caretakers of old. Imagine that instead of locking the doors in a draconian fast, we simply invite a second spirit into the house, the spirit of the wind, or the silent river. This spirit does not fight the artist, it simply flows through the house, carrying a subtle, invisible current. It enters not through the main door of starvation, but through the hidden windows of specific signals. When we consume the mimetics, the dark, bitter roots, the deep green leaves, the compounds that taste of the earth, we are opening these windows. We are allowing a draft to blow through the cluttered rooms. This draft whispers to the artist, the winter is coming, even when the sun is shining. It tricks the artist into a state of thrifty conservation. He pauses his frantic creation, looks at the piles of debris, and says, we must be wise. We must recycle. Consider the ancient allegory of the phoenix, which appears in cultures from Egypt to China. The phoenix knows that it cannot live forever in the same feathers. They grow heavy with oil and dirt, they lose their sheen and their ability to catch the wind. The bird does not wait for a predator to kill it. It builds a nest of aromatic spices, cinnamon, myrrh, frankincense, and sets it alight. It consumes itself in fire to be born again. This is the perfect mythological mirror of autophagy. The fire is not a destructive force, it is a purifying one. The aromatic spices are the very polyphenols and nutrients we now know trigger this process. By consuming these spices of life, the resveratrol in grapes, the berberine in barberry, we are building the nest. We are igniting the controlled burn that consumes the old feathers, the damaged proteins, so that new plumage may grow. The 16-hour fast is one way to strike the match, but the spices themselves carry the heat. There is also the story of the river that cleans itself. A stagnant pond, fed constantly by runoff but with no outlet, becomes a swamp. Algae bloom, oxygen dies, and the water turns foul. This is the cell under the tyranny of constant insulin, constant mTOR activation. But a river that flows, that has periods of rushing rapids and quiet pools, stays clear. The rocks at the bottom are scrubbed clean by the friction of the water. We are learning to turn our biology from a swamp back into a river. The stones in our river are the organelles, the mitochondria. When we introduce the flow of hormetic stress, a burst of cold water, a period of intense breath, a specific phytochemical, we increase the speed of the current. We scour the slime from the stones. We do not need to dry up the river fasting to clean the stones. We simply need to make the water run faster and clearer for brief, potent intervals. These narratives tell us that the power to renew is not a punishment requiring suffering and starvation, it is an inherent rhythm of nature that we have forgotten. The house wants to be clean. The bird wants to fly. The river wants to flow. The mechanisms of autophagy are the physical manifestation of this universal desire for renewal. By understanding this, we stop fighting our bodies with rigid clocks and deprivation, and instead, we start collaborating with them, using the language of symbols: bitterness, heat, cold, breath, to guide the restoration of our inner temple. We realize that the time leaks in our body are simply places where the flow has stopped, and we now hold the tools to unclog them, not with a sledgehammer, but with the gentle, persistent pressure of water. Having traversed the landscape of cellular biology and the misty realms of myth, we must now plant our feet firmly on the ground of the everyday. How do we take these high-flying concepts, the Nobel science, the dancing architect, the phoenix's fire, and weave them into the fabric of a Tuesday morning or a Thursday evening? The goal is to create a fasting mimicking lifestyle, a way of living that keeps the hum of autophagy audible in the background of your life, without the deafening silence of total starvation. We are not discarding the clock entirely, but we are learning to manipulate time's effect on the body through strategic inputs. We are moving from the passive waiting of the 16-hour fast to the active engagement of biosignaling. The first thread to weave is the nutrient Trojan horse. We can consume foods that nourish us energetically, but remain invisible to the insulin/mTOR surveillance system, or better yet, foods that actively trigger the cleanup crew. Start your morning not with the heavy load of carbohydrates that screams growth to the architect, but with a signal of clarity. Black coffee is the most accessible mimetic. Its polyphenols stimulate autophagy in the liver, heart, and muscle. But we can go further. Adding a source of pure fat, like MCT oil or coconut oil, provides ketones a superfuel that bypasses the usual metabolic pathways and keeps insulin low, maintaining the illusion of fasting while fueling the brain. You are eating, yet your cells perceive a continued fast. Introduce autophagy activators into your meals. The spermidine found in aged cheeses, mushrooms, and soy products. The sulforaphane in broccoli sprouts. The curcumin in turmeric. These are not just flavors. They are chemical commands that say cleanse rather than clutter. The second thread is the thermal pulse. Our ancestors lived in direct contact with the elements, while we live in climate-controlled bubbles that dull our adaptive mechanisms. Temperature variation is a potent signal for cellular cleanup. We can harness the shock of cold and the embrace of heat. Ending your daily shower with 30 to 60 seconds of cold water is not merely a wake-up call for your mind. It triggers a cascade of norepinephrine and cold shock proteins that dampen inflammation and stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, the renewal of the cell's power plants. Conversely, the heat of a sauna or a hot bath mimics a fever state, activating heat shock proteins that refold damaged proteins inside your cells, essentially repairing the broken furniture in our allegorical house. You don't need a cryotherapy chamber or a luxury spa. A cold shower and a hot bath are powerful tools to pulse the autophagy signal. The third thread is the breath of the void. We often think of nutrition as what we put into our mouths, but oxygen is the most critical nutrient of all, and how we use it dictates our metabolic state. Most of us are chronic overbreathers, keeping our bodies in a state of low-grade stress that fuels the architect's chaotic building. By practicing periods of intermittent hypoxia, short breath holds, or reduced breathing techniques, we drop the oxygen saturation in our blood briefly. This momentary crisis forces the body to become more efficient, triggering the recycling of old, inefficient red blood cells and stimulating the production of EPO erythropoietin. It is a signal of scarcity that requires no hunger, only breath. A few minutes of box breathing, or the more intense Tummo-style breathing, can flip switches deep in the brain stem that regulate longevity pathways. Finally, we must rethink movement not as burning calories, but as clearing waste. The 16-hour myth often ignores the fact that exercise is the most potent autophagy trigger of all. You do not need to fast for 16 hours if you move with intensity. High-intensity interval training HIIT creates a rapid depletion of glycogen in the muscles, mimicking the energy state of a long fast in a fraction of the time. This is the metabolic shortcut. 20 minutes of intense exertion can create the same cellular signaling environment as a day of starvation. The architect is silenced by the urgent need for fuel, and the custodian rushes in to strip the cells of damaged components to burn for energy. By timing this movement, perhaps in a fasted state in the morning, or right before a meal, we amplify the signal. We are wringing out the sponge of the muscles, forcing the stagnant fluid to leave and fresh fluid to enter. Integration means moving away from the binary on/off of eating versus fasting and into a fluid dimmer switch approach. You might eat 3 meals a day, but if those meals are low in sugar, high in mimetics, and bookended by cold exposure, breathwork, and intense movement, your autophagy load might be higher than someone who fasts for 16 hours, but spends the rest of the day sedentary and eating processed food. We are building a lifestyle where the default state is renewal. We are sealing the time leaks not by freezing time, but by making every moment of the day a subtle nudge toward repair. We are turning the mundane acts of showering, breathing, and eating into a symphony of biological cues that keep the phoenix fire burning low and steady, constantly renewing the vessel from the inside out. We have traveled far in this exploration, journeying from the sterile, bright lights of the Nobel Laboratory, where Yoshinori Ohsumi first peered into the self-eating machinery of yeast cells, to the misty, ancient mountains where Daoist masters cultivated the golden pill of immortality through intuition alone. We have dismantled the rigid fortress of the 16-hour myth, brick by brick, not to discard the value of fasting, but to reveal the secret doors and hidden passageways that surround it. We have discovered that the miraculous renewal of autophagy is not a binary switch that only flips after a day of hunger. It is a musical instrument, a symphony of cellular signaling that responds to the conductor's baton, and you are the conductor. The profound truth that now rests in your hands is that aging is not a fixed sentence handed down by time. It is a flexible process of accumulation and clearance, of entropy and order. And for the first time in human history, we possess both the scientific map and the ancient compass to navigate this terrain with precision. As you stand at the threshold of this new understanding, it is crucial to recognize the shift in identity that this knowledge demands. You are no longer a passive passenger in a vehicle destined for the scrap heap. You are the mechanic, the architect, and the custodian combined. The time leaks we spoke of those microscopic cracks, where waste accumulates, where the zombie cells fester, where the silence of the architect allows the rubble to pile up, are not inevitable. They are the result of a disconnect, a forgotten language between your conscious mind and your cellular biology. By learning the vocabulary of autophagy, the bitter notes of polyphenols, the sharp shock of cold, the breathless pause of hypoxia, the rhythmic pulse of movement, you are re-establishing this dialogue. You are telling your body that it is safe to clean, safe to repair, safe to drop the heavy armor of growth, and attend to the delicate work of restoration. This is the ultimate alchemy of the 21st century, the transmutation of daily habit into biological destiny. When you choose to end your shower with cold water, you are not just getting wet. You are tempering the steel of your mitochondria. When you choose the broccoli sprout over the sweet roll, you are not just eating a vegetable, you are deploying a molecular cleaning crew to scrub the walls of your arteries. When you engage in deep, rhythmic breathwork, you are not just inhaling air, you are changing the acidity of your blood and signaling the nervous system to shift from panic to preservation. These acts, small and mundane as they may seem in isolation, weave together to form a suit of armor against the ravages of time. They allow you to live with the luminosity of youth, the mental clarity, the joint fluidity, the boundless energy long into the autumn and winter of your years. We must also cast aside the fear that often drives the quest for longevity. So often, we chase health because we are terrified of death, of the fading of the light. But the practice of activating autophagy is not born of fear, it is born of respect. It is a daily act of reverence for the incredibly complex biological vessel you inhabit. It is an acknowledgement that your body is a microcosm of the universe, subject to the same laws of creation and destruction that govern the stars. Just as a forest requires the periodic purge of a wildfire to clear the underbrush and allow new saplings to rise, your body requires the cold fire of autophagy to clear the molecular underbrush. By embracing this cycle, you are aligning yourself with the fundamental rhythm of the cosmos. You are no longer fighting against nature, you are flowing with it, riding the waves of renewal rather than drowning in the undertow of decay. Let this be your call to transformation. Do not wait for a diagnosis, a breakdown, or a milestone birthday to begin this work. The 16-hour myth taught us to wait for the clock to tick down, to wait for the hunger to set in. But the new science teaches us to act. The potential for renewal is present in this very moment. It is in the next breath you take, if you choose to make it deep and controlled. It is in the next meal you eat, if you choose to infuse it with the mimetics of longevity. It is in the next movement you make, if you choose to make it purposeful and intense. You possess the power to trigger the Nobel-winning mechanism of autophagy right now, without the need for starvation, simply by making a conscious shift in the signals you send to your cells. Imagine a version of yourself a year from now, or 10 years from now. In the old narrative, this version is slower, stiffer, foggier. But in this new narrative, that future self is lighter. The debris has been cleared. The neural pathways are scrubbed clean of plaque, allowing thoughts to move with the speed of lightning. The joints move with the ease of well-oiled machinery. The energy is consistent, a steady flame rather than a flickering candle. This reality is not a fantasy. It is a biological possibility written into your DNA, waiting for the right code to unlock it. You have the code. You have the knowledge. The time leaks are sealed not by magic, but by the daily, rhythmic practice of cellular hygiene. So, step forward into this new way of being. Become the alchemist of time. Do not count the hours on the clock, make the hours count. Embrace the bitter, the cold, the breathless, and the intense. Invite the custodian into the house of your body and give him the tools he needs to sweep the floors clean. You are building a temple that can withstand the storm, a vessel that remains pristine even as it sails through the ocean of years. The myth is broken. The truth is revealed. The power is yours. Begin the renewal today, and let the silent furnace of your own biology burn away the old to make way for the eternal new.